Good morning, Jan. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Mona?
Good. And welcome to all of our guests that are joining us for another edition of Greek the Week. And Jan has an interesting topic for us today, and how to calm down overreacting or reacting. So, you want to share with us what's on your mind?
Yeah, well, last week we brought up the topic of reacting and responding, that they're two different things. And one of our guests that we had last week, after we quit recording, we had a little interesting discussion about reacting and responding. And uh, and so for me, well, actually, when I was in graduate school for counseling, there was this bookmark that one of my instructors gave us that it read, "React not to the deed, respond to the need." And so that was, to me, that was a real good way about considering the basic needs whenever somebody does something, because so many times the thing that they do isn't really what's the matter. There's something else that's going on. So the caution is, don't just react to what the person is doing. Respond to what it is that they need. And just coincidentally, in my marathoners Facebook group, I that respond to the need was the topic of one of the posts I made last week. And the example I gave was like when you have a teenager who has this need for freedom. He's growing up, he's getting, starting to be able to reason a little bit more, and he thinks that he should have more freedom than what his parents allow him. And so he sneaks out at night, but then he gets caught. And so the parents frequently are reacting to the deed of sneaking out at night. But a better way to handle the situation would be to acknowledge that need. Your son, your adolescent, is growing up. He thinks he deserves to have more freedom. He thinks he thinks your rules are silly, and that he should be able to do more than what you're allowing him to do. And so he has that need for freedom. And then also in my post, I talk about, well, this is a great opportunity to talk to the child about the responsibilities that come with freedom, and to negotiate those difference with them, using one of those caring or connecting habits where you're negotiating your difference and trying to find something that'll work out, because the parent has the need to know where the child is, that he's not getting into trouble, that he's not doing something stupid or all those things. But the child needs to be able to grow up and to learn from his mistakes. We all make mistakes, and we need to learn from them. So I was looking at it from the acknowledging the need standpoint, but then we kind of got caught up in the reacting versus responding. Those words, are they really different, or are they the same?
Right. And it's always that need versus need. And if it's met like this, then it becomes very reactive and very difficult. Whereas if it's more with an open hand, and the need of this one and the need of that one to be looked at with an open hand, so that you can see what could be done for that compromise that's for the good of the whole.
Right.
I saw Mike Fulkerson do a role play with a teenager that was similar to the one you're talking about. The kid was sneaking out at night, and the mother was just, clamping down, that taking away more privileges, and it was getting the more difficult time. And he began to talk with her, and he said, your mom sounds like she's really important to you. And she said, well, yeah, she is, she is my mom. And the more they began to talk about it, he said, but you really like being with your friends, and really began to look at her need also to go out in the freedom, and that it's a big deal for you. And anyway, the bottom line was the girl began to realize that, oh, okay. So maybe, are you trying to tell me that if I had more respect for mom, that she might give me a longer curfew?
And for some adolescents, that is hard for them to get. It's like, well, why would that matter? And so that's what when you teach them, well, you're showing responsibility. You're showing that you're contributing to this.
Right. And it's the need is met for everyone because, if you're going to be even later than that, at least give me a text or give me a call to let me know because I care about you. And, there's the Carl Rogers, the neighborhood, would you be my neighbor?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't seen the whole thing, but I've watched part of it again and again because it is just so wonderful. And Mr. Rogers says that love is at the root of everything. Learning, relationship, or the lack thereof.
Yeah. Yes.
And so when I looked up the word R-E, just the prefix RE. And it means, we take our words, every word has power. It has power with how we originally was coined to use, and then it has power how we've used it and reused it and used it in other things that kind of works, but maybe didn't fill up the complete thing. But as a prefix is to do again or to renew.
Mm-hmm.
And then that it can be used backwards as in to recall.
Okay.
So if we go back and look at recalling, and I was just thinking about that, what, Fred Rogers said, love is the root of everything. And in communion, you go to remember what happened. And in that remembering, it is joining us together. You're a member, you're a member, you're a member, you're a member, I'm a member. And we are remembering ourselves together for the good of the whole. And to me, that's kind of like what responding is that, and looking at what was responding used for originally. Well, way back when, respond was if there was they were building a cathedral and were putting in an arch, but the weight on the top wasn't enough and it began to fall in, they would take a stone or a board or something and put it up so that it was a responder to keep the top from falling in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that was one of the definitions that I found when I was looking up response and respond and react is to be answerable, respond in damages. And so that I think is that definition that we're looking at. You're responding to things to whatever is happening in your life. But to me that does involve some thinking, because when something like the cathedral starting to fall down,
right,
you have to think about, well, what is going to help it, instead of just kind of throwing things at it. Let's do something that's actually going to help the situation and not make it worse. And so I believe that that the respond is there is thinking involved. You are making choices on what you're going to do. You are choosing what to do as a result of whatever this thing is that happened.
Yes, and doing it quickly.
Quickly.
So that it averts that catastrophe. Yeah, so it's being quick to think, but it's also being quick to think in, is it going to be effective or ineffective?
Mm-hmm.
Not just to do something to take the mind off or something which goes back to react. And so reacting is that counterforce.
Mm-hmm.
Something.
Yeah.
And often we may think, well, I'm responding to it. I mean, so-and-so said this and I said this and I was responding to it. But if it comes as a pushback, that's when it becomes reactive, or that's whenever the other person has a tendency to become reactive too, and then it kind of goes like this, right, to give more power to push back.
Yeah, yeah. And that is one of the definitions for react, was to act in opposition to a force or influence.
Right.
So something happens and then we're instinctively reacting to counteract that force. We're not really thinking about what's best for the situation. We're focusing on the deed. We're focusing on the force instead of looking at, okay, what's the cause of it?
And so the child that wants more freedom to go out with their friends is sneaking out in a deliberate, forceful pushback to mom saying it's too late of a curfew.
Right, right. So how many parents out there ever told their kids nothing good happens after midnight?
Right.
Like, everyone's supposed to be sleeping then. Nothing good happens after midnight. But the kid is like, but that's when all the good stuff happens. Well, what is this good stuff that's happening? Let's talk about it, and let's talk about why you want to do this.
Yeah.
But it's trying to understand where they're coming from and what the real need is. Is it really to be able to go out at night, or is it I'm just holding on too tightly to my baby and I'm not ready to let go? Maybe there's some other things that we can do as we negotiate our differences so that we all have our needs met and do what's good for our relationship and keeping everybody safe.
Yes, exactly. In the Mr. Rogers documentary, a child asked him, he said, what am I to do with this mad that I feel?
Mm.
And Mr. Rogers, just was very gentle with him and to look at the mad that you feel and what need is. It's what need is not being met, and how could you ask for that need to be met as opposed to demanding, and to realize that I can stop before I make it worse. Yeah. And he did it in a really cute little song. I wish I remembered it, but it was good. But sometimes, it is action that is the distraction. Yeah. And I think back to my grandchildren, working with them, and I had this one incident where my little granddaughter was just so determined, and it was just and she had a need, and we weren't communicating. I didn't know what that need was, and we weren't anyway. And I just started singing. I just burst out into a Carpenter song, sing, and I just started singing. And all of a sudden, the kid just started, just looked at me like,
"What are you doing? Is this a musical?"
Yeah. Just doesn't matter if it's good enough for anyone else to hear. Just sing, And I started doing it, and then she looked at me, and I looked at her, and then I reached down and I picked her up, and we started dancing around the room, and just like everything was okay.
Yeah.
And action is a distraction, but we don't want it to be a counteractive distraction.
It doesn't have to be a negative distraction.
Right.
It can be a positive one too. Yeah.
It's when it's responding to a need, even though you are not able to communicate what that need is.
Right. Because you don't always know what it is.
Right.
You don't always know.
Sometimes, the person can't tell you what it is.
Right.
And whether that's a child that is not yet able to literally speak, or whether it is an adult that doesn't know how to speak.
Yeah, well, because it could be a lot of things. Because and as you get older, life gets more complicated. You're involved in a lot more things, and there's just a lot of distractions going on. You may not know it may not be one thing that's really bothering you, but taking the time to stop and think about it and try to understand. Well, maybe there's one little thing I can do that'll help me to feel better. That'll help to get my needs met. When in doubt, go outside and go take a walk, or sing and dance.
Exactly. It is amazing what just a change of scenery will do. Just walking outside and, taking a deep breath. Yeah. We think, we breathe all the time, but yet it's so automatic we don't pay attention to it. And sometimes it's just in paying attention to it. Mm-hmm. Because, our breath literally can relax us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
We take it in and hold it for a second and just, I like to think of it, especially if your shoulders or the back or whatever, wherever that tension is that sets up in your body. Mm-hmm. Consciously take that breath there and hold it there a minute and let it work like WD-40.
Loosen
to get in
everything
there
up.
and loosen it up and then just literally release it and blow it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes even in the blowing out, you need to give a little extra puff that I'm getting rid of that tension so that I can pay attention to what the real issue is.
Yes.
And I can handle it with grace and with love that is at the heart of, that is at the root of learning and relationship, or that's against it.
And I can choose how I'm going to respond, and while keeping in mind, is this relationship important to me? Do I want to do what's best for the relationship, or is this really this thing that I want to do so important that I'm going to do it in spite of the relationship? But at least you're making that conscious decision on how you're going to, what you're going to do about whatever it is that happened.
A conscious decision.
Yeah.
And that conscious decision even has some kind of a hint to it that it's looking to the future of how it would be the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the thing too. We're so focused sometimes about what's happening right now, we don't really think about what the consequences can be later on.
And the right now is the only now we have.
That's right.
And so I'm thinking about this, talking about the teenagers and the children and the whatever, that, sometimes we may be busy doing something, maybe nothing else, just watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
And our child, whether it's a teen or a younger one, is doing something that is distracting our given attention. And, we may act childish in response to their childlikeness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that happens because you get caught up in the emotion, and you are just reacting, and that's how you go back to how you've always done things.
Right.
And you're not really thinking about is this good for me to respond right now? Is this?
Yeah, and we get caught up in those things, and it's, well, I can't help it. That's just the way I am. Is it really the way we are, or is it the way we have? Yeah. And if it's the way we are, is it the way we want to stay?
Right. Do we want to stay there? Do we want to stay in that situation? Does that feel good for you? Right.
And even if it's just, in one of the chicken soup books I read about this guy that, anytime his child would make a request, and he automatically gave a no. Mm-hmm. And the child, their relationship was getting more and more distant and more strained, and he was aware of that. And I don't know if someone made the comment to him or not, but somehow he became aware of the fact that maybe that was one of the things that was pushing her away.
Right.
And he decided that he was not going to say no to his kid again, even if he had to say, "Let me think about it."
Right.
And just that little bitty pause, as opposed to the no.
Well, the no is an easy answer. It's just so easy, and for a while it'll cut the argument, and some kids will just take the no and they're okay with it. But some kids, they're just going to keep pushing, and so that pushes you farther and farther apart, and it's not very fun when you've got all these ideas, all these things you want to do, and somebody keeps tearing it down or denying you to be able to do it. I mean, I had that happen to me when I was working. I had ideas about what to do for my job, and my boss kept telling me no. And there's just nothing worse than saying no. It's like, but wait a minute, you hired me because I'm supposed to be good at what I'm doing. So how come I don't get to have any ideas? How come all the ideas have to be yours?
Yeah, and it's just listening to each other. That maybe you do, maybe.
Yeah.
And then build on it. You may not have the definitive answer, but whether it's a coworker or a mate or just whomever.
Let the person do what the idea they have. You may learn something. It may be better than what you were thinking. Or it might be you just don't want to change anything, or you're used to things the way they are. But it doesn't hurt to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, and realizing that others can see things that we can't see.
Yeah.
When do you want to know that the boat won't float? When it's in a dry dock or when you're out in the ocean.
Yeah.
And so a little preventiveness is definitely something to look at.
Right. Right.
And to always hold that, and it kind of goes back to Mr. Rogers and will you be my neighbor? And realizing that the power of TV had the ability to make a neighborhood out of the whole world.
Mm.
Or we can make enemies out of the whole world.
Right. Yeah. we have our choice.
And we've looked before, at responding with civility and humility and realizing that everyone is important.
Yeah.
And being civil rather than that reactive or that negative response, or that responding to the need you have, the need the other has, the need that all our neighbors have.
Everybody has. Yeah.
Because we're more alike than we are different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I am so convinced that we are all searching for the same thing.
Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you. We look at it in different ways, but we all have, different ideas of what we're looking for, but it's essentially, it's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. We may give it a different name, a different color, a different texture, a different something. But when we get down to the base of it, when we get down to the root of it,
yeah,
it's all the same thing.
It is.
And love and that need to belong and that need for relationship and that need for connection and that need for power, which again is the ability to be able to. The need for power, to stay out late, to be on time, to not be on time, to make someone else be on time.
To have the choice.
Right. Also has that need, which is kind of all mixed together with that power need of to be able to.
Mm-hmm.
And as we can work and negotiate the guidelines so that I'll listen and then we'll consider and we'll rethink. It's back to that rethink.
Right, back to the re.
Yeah.
So back to the words. I want to circle back a little bit to that. We did get a comment from when they announced this broadcast, and I had the topic in the announcement. We got a comment from a member who said that she remembers. It seems like it was about 25 years ago when this happened. She was teaching a class, and Dr. Glasser said not to use the word response. He did not like that word response. And I remember, about the whole phone call thing. You don't have to answer the phone,
right?
Or yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to pick it up just because it's ringing. And of course, that was before we had the call waitings and all that. You could see everything.
But it talked about the stimulus response. And so you've got the stimulus, which is the phone ringing, and the response is you go and pick it up. And so I can understand then why then the word respond is, we don't want to use respond. We want to say that we do have a choice because of that.
Because it seems to indicate that there had to be that stimulus there or you wouldn't have picked it up.
Right, or you wouldn't have done the response.
Right.
But I think the way we're talking about response is more that it does involve thinking about it and making a deliberate action instead of just action where we're just reacting to the stimulus. Because stimulus response, the response is something uncontrolled. It just happens. I mean, it's the lost dog, right? That's where the whole stimulus response came from. That just hearing the bell, they started salivating because they knew it was time they were going to get fed. And so that was not something they did knowingly. It just became associated with the.
It becomes a habit reaction.
It becomes a habit.
Yeah. And if it becomes that, where it's going to be a very negative thing, that someone just have a look on their face and it can begin to, release all that negative adrenaline.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead. with the responding. I mean,
so I'm just talking about the responding becoming a habit. I think that's a good word for it. And we end up doing that with the way we respond to our family, like the whole saying no. I mean, that becomes a habit where your daughter's asking you something and you really don't want to get into it. So it's just no. It's always no, without really thinking about it. Is this the most appropriate response? It's what I normally do and how I normally react. But is this the way I want to be? Is this what I want to do?
So it's recall, remember, this is my child, this is my coworker, this is my neighbor.
Right.
How do I want to treat them?
How do I want to treat them? Is that relationship important to me? And is what I'm doing helping to bring us closer together, or is it pushing them farther away? And so I'm not. I mean, he's saying that you have a choice. That was the solution, was to say I'm choosing to do this. But to me, that's how the respond is. I'm choosing to respond. And I don't know what other word to use. It gets very cumbersome and very complicated to find another word to use instead.
But once we begin to know that internally, that we are deliberately making a choice.
Right. We're making a deliberate choice. It becomes
second nature to us to make a choice that has a little more thought to it than a choice that is just going with whatever the emotions are.
Yeah.
And back to education and getting more information and being able to actually see something in our mind so we can see it in reality. Whenever 911 was being introduced to the nation, to call 911 to get the responders to come for accidents or fires or whatever. And I was going around I was working with the fire department at the time, and I was going around to the nursery schools and helping the kiddos learn to call 911.
Oh, were you?
Yeah. And so we would, we did a role play. Because, they would yell it out, 911. And we were doing a role play. And so I had a little monkey telephone there, and I was the person, and I was, and I fell on the floor and said to the kid, what are you going to do to call 911? And so, well, come over here and call. I need help. And the little kid went over and he picked up the phone and he just stood there. And 911, dial 911. And the teachers standing around the room, one of them looked at them and said, they don't know their numbers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They don't know their numbers yet. Sounds great. Sounds wonderful. Yeah, call 911, but I don't know what a 9 looks like.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what a 1 looks like. I don't know what that is. So sometimes we just have to go back to realizing that love is at the root of everything. Learning, understanding, relationship, or the lack of it.
Yeah.
And so no matter what word we're using, whether it is coined by Dr. Glasser or whether it is the clearing statement of access consciousness or whether it is there's just so many things we could rattle out, and they're all good. They are good. It goes back to the intention of the heart.
Right. The intent, to look at the intent and to focus on that. I heard what you said, but I really don't think that's what you meant.
Right. Or even if it is what you meant, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And let's see how that is that what you meant. Maybe you did mean it for harm initially. But as we look at it in the long run.
Yeah.
Because those hurts keep on hurting.
They do. And it's so important to talk about those things. Because it's hard to talk about it sometimes. Because it does bring up emotion, and some people are very uncomfortable with emotion. And so to create a safe place to be able to discuss it. Or maybe we just talk about it a little bit. Let's just scratch the surface here and see where you are. and okay, I see it's a little difficult. Let's stop, and we'll come back and talk about it again. But I see so many times there's just so much emotion involved that it just says, well, I don't want to deal with it because it's just too much. But that emotion doesn't go away on its own. It's going to show up somewhere, some way, somehow.
And it's giving that little pause.
Yeah.
We can rethink.
Yes.
Let that emotion settle, whether it's, just let it settle.
Yeah.
And we can give an answer rather than a comeback.
Yeah.
Giving up, even if it's, I will think about it, but then do that.
Right. And then come back and let's continue with the conversation.
Yeah. Well, this has been interesting. And
bringing
it up. And
it was a good conversation this time. Just to let everybody know, next week, being Labor Day here in the United States, we are not going to have a broadcast, so we'll be back. Excuse me?
So enjoy.
Yes. So we'll be back in 2 weeks on September the 10th for our next edition of Greet the Week. And so thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, sounds good. Bye-bye.